भुवनेश्वर मोर होम टाउन जीवन बहुत वर्ष इनिशियल इयर्स रे मुझे भुवनेश्वर कटई जो प्रत्येक थर भुवनेश्वर आसे भुवनेश्वर गोटे अलग फिलिंग आसे माने अनेक दिन पर जो भुवनेश्वर लैंड कर गोटे होमली फिलिंग आ गोटे अन्य जगह भी आई फील वेरी मच पार्ट ऑफ अदर प्लेसेस बट भुवनेश्वर आसिले गोटे स्पेशल फिलिंग कि मु भुवनेश्वर चैप्टर ओडिशा चैप्टर ऑफ आईसीएआई को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद जनाइबा चाहूँगी। ओडिया रे मु कहि परिबी पूरा भाषणटा किंतु एठी अनेक अछंती जो माने कि ओडिया बुझी परिबेनी सेति कि मु इंग्लिश रे कहिबी। Chairperson of Bhubaneswar chapter or branch of the ICI, Ms. Janvi Deo, Shri Prasant Panda, Shri Sanjeev Sanghi, Shri Gautam Lenka, Shri Ranjit Kumar Agarwal, President AI. I am thankful that he has made it, he has found it convenient to be here today. Shri Sandeep Kumar Gupta, CMD GAIL, who is here as a guest of honor. It's heartening to know that he is a chartered accountant himself and he has given several suggestions for the consideration of the ICAI. Members of the media, my colleagues from the Reserve Bank, officials of the government, distinguished guests, members of ICAI, ladies and gentlemen. I am delighted to be here this morning to participate in this conference of the ICAI, which and your national conference. The role of auditors, in particular statutory auditors and other auditors, even if you are not doing a statutory function, the other functions which you are doing, the role of auditors is very, very important for the progress of our country, a point which has been highlighted by the previous speakers. Auditors act as the eyes and ears of any business or any company. Auditors provide critical insights into the actual working and actual state of health of any business organization or any company or any other organization which may not be dealing with finance, but which may be in manufacturing, which may be an NGO, which may be whatever be the entity. So auditors are indeed the eyes and ears, and they're expected to be truly and fully professional, autonomous in their functioning, without any fear or favor. In fact, auditors are expected to provide independent evaluation of the companies, as I just mentioned, and so therefore this is a point which is known to all of you, and I don't have to say anything more. Now, the quality of audit in any organization is very important. From the country's perspective, depending on the quality of our audit professionals, the international confidence of the rest of the world on India's economy, on India's finances, the confidence of international investors, the confidence of Indian investors and confidence of every Indian on the functioning of financial institutions like banks, NBFCs or any other business, howsoever big or small. I think for developing that confidence, the role of auditors is extremely important. So the quality of audit is very important. Quality of audit transcends merely going into numbers, because today in the age of artificial intelligence and in the age of computers, you can program everything and the AI can generate an audit of any firm based on the numbers which is presented before you by the management of the company. But it's the auditor's task and challenge to see that the numbers which are provided are correct, the numbers which are provided by the management are truthful, and they are not sort of camouflaging any hidden reality. I am not for a moment, I repeat, I am not for a moment encouraging you to have a confrontational relationship with the managements of companies which you are auditing? Certainly not. But I think it's a part of your responsibility to do a true diagnosis like a doctor does, a true diagnosis of the health of a company. I think that is the biggest responsibility. There are quality aspects in the functioning of any company, how the board is functioning, whether the discussions in the board proceedings are free and fair, whether the reporting systems are adequate, whether the internal controls in any company and in particular financial institutions by like the banks, etc., whether they are appropriate and whether they are robust. I think these are the qualitative aspects also which I would feel are important, which auditors may look at. Now, I'm not sure whether it is a part of the brief of the role of auditors as perceived by the ICAI, but as from the Reserve Bank of India, we give lot of importance to these issues. Today, our supervisors, when they go to, when do the annual supervision, in fact, it is no more an annual supervision of banks and NBFCs. It is today almost real time and online, because we have now in the Reserve Bank, we have a dedicated vertical for supervision in which there is a team, which is again split into, not split, but there are two wings of it. One wing does on-site supervision by visiting the bank or the NBFC. The other wing does off-site supervision because all the data inflow comes almost on real-time basis, and based on the data, using various methods of data analytics and AI, the numbers are examined, the numbers are analyzed for the system as a whole and for individual banks and NBFCs, and the vulnerability indicators, any signs or signals of weakness are generated and are analyzed by our officers. It is partly technology driven. It is majorly application of mind to try and see where the future challenges could arise, where the future vulnerabilities or where the future risks may come. So therefore, I'm not sure whether it's a part of the work of an auditor, but we would expect from the Reserve Bank auditors also to comment on such aspects while while signing the balance sheets of banks and non-banks, and I would feel the same would apply to other businesses and companies as well. Now, we have from the Reserve Bank tried to give a lot of encouragement. We expect the audit profession to be absolutely fair and truthful and not to worry about any any possibility of the management of company. Again, I'm not trying to create a friction between you and the company's management, but to give greater confidence to the auditor community, we have now mandated, you would be aware, we have now mandated prior approval of the Reserve Bank. I repeat, it is now mandatory for any bank or NBFC, banks and UCBs, that is any commercial banks or urban cooperative banks, if they are removing a particular auditor, they can do so only with the prior approval of the Reserve Bank of India. Because we don't want the auditors, the audit company, the audit firm, we don't want you to act under any kind of pressure. So that is one major step which we have taken. We are also having these days of late for the last 3 years or so structured meetings with the auditors of individual banks. We have also mandated a minimum of 2 auditors. We have also mandated a minimum of 2 auditors to audit the banks. Public sector banks always had multiple auditors, but many private sector banks had just one auditor year after year. So we have now mandated at least 2 auditors per for every bank. We have also mandated a total number of audits, bank audits, which an individual audit firm can take, so that it gives greater opportunity to the entire auditor community to do audit of banks, and also to ensure that the same auditor doing large number of banks, if his knowingly or unknowingly, I repeat, knowingly or unknowingly, if he has any inherent bias in his thinking, that also gets eliminated. And we also have done this only to avoid concentration risk of our audit system vis-a-vis the banks. There are several other steps also which we have taken with regard to appointment of auditors, which we have said we are holding structured meetings with the auditors of the banks and the NBFCs wherever we find that the divergences, great divergence between the auditors finding, especially with regard to NPA numbers and the number which is arrived at by our supervisors. We have an interaction with the audit firm to find out why the auditor firm missed it out. The idea is to take corrective action. The idea is not to be punitive, not to give punishment or any such thing. The idea is to be collaborative and improve the quality of audit. In very extremely rare cases where we have reasons to believe that it was not done properly or it was done, we feel that it was not done correctly, we refer them to the ICAI or to the NFRA to deal with it. A few cases we have referred to the ICAI to examine and use their judgment to do that. So overall, our approach has been very collaborative. I would like to also, just as I mentioned, it is very important that ethics in the profession, like any other profession, ethics in every profession is, I think, a supreme requirement, whichever profession you belong to. In this background, I would like to stress that it is vital that auditors follow the code of ethics and other professional standards while discharging their responsibility. I am happy to note that the ICAI has formed an ethical standards board for framing ethical standards for chartered accountants in line with the international best practices on ethics and subject to local laws, that is subject to domestic laws and regulations, of course. Now, as and when this code of ethics is ready, I am sure this will certainly enhance the quality and consistency of services provided by the chartered accountants and would strengthen the public confidence in the profession. This is a point which I alluded to earlier. The audit community, as was pointed out earlier, has an important role in the growth of our economy because it's take a separate, I think, conversation, please. Take a conversation bond karo, distract hochi mo. Thank you. So therefore, I think together every stakeholder in our economy, including the auditors, have a prime responsibility in the growth story of India. We have aspirations of improving our growth trajectory in the next few decades, going into India at 100, that is in 2047. We have huge growth aspirations for our country and for our people, and I think in this task, every stakeholder in the system, in the economic system, including auditors, have a very important role. And one point which I would like to mention, one aspect I would like to mention is that while you are absolutely familiar with the accounting practices of balance sheets, examining the accounts from various angles of companies and businesses, I think it is also essential. I'm sure many of you have it and I have seen it. I can say that many of you possess that capacity, many of you possess that knowledge base. I can say it with confidence on the basis of my personal interaction. But it is also very important for auditors to have a good understanding of the working of our overall macroeconomy. I think because you are doing audit of businesses, and the businesses, whether banks or non-banks or a manufacturing company or whichever company, let it be a service sector company, they are operating within an overall economic system. So when you are operating within an overall economic system, I think it's very important that the auditors also fully understand what's happening in the overall economic system, and that will definitely enrich the capacity of individual auditors to to discharge their tasks. And so therefore I wish to just one more aspect, as I said, which I would like to highlight is the state of the economy of the Indian economy at present. I am sure many of you would be keen to know my views on the RBI's views and the RBI's assessment of where the economy stands and what is the future outlook. Of course, we do provide, on behalf of the Reserve Bank, I do provide this assessment and guidance as a part of the monetary policy statement, which we make every 2 months, or even in various speeches either by me or by the deputy governors. But in this meeting, I thought it prudent, I thought it appropriate to just touch upon very briefly on the state of the Indian economy. Now, the RBI is an integral part of the Indian economy as a regulator. In fact, RBI's range of responsibilities are multiple responsibilities that RBI, the Reserve Bank, has. Unlike many other central banks which deal only with monetary policy or with a few other subjects together with monetary policy, Reserve Bank is among the very few central banks which has got such a wide range of functions, starting from monetary policy to banking regulation to foreign exchange management to payment systems to issue of currency notes, dealing with developmental issues like promoting financial inclusion, financial literacy. So, the range of responsibilities are of the Reserve Bank are one of the widest in the world. And therefore, the Reserve Bank is known as a full service central bank. And experience has shown that throughout the journey of the Indian economy, the Reserve Bank has played a critical role in the development of our economy. If you think back in the early days of our 5-year plans, the responsibility of the Reserve Bank was to make credit resources available for implementation of the 5-year plans. Provision of credit was an integral part of the early years of our independence in the 5-year plans, and the Reserve Bank was those days in the 50s and 60s focused on provision of credit and resource allocation for the economy. Then thereafter, in the 1970s, you are aware there was the oil crisis, there was high inflation, and therefore in the 80s, the Reserve Bank adopted a policy of monetary targeting to contain money supply to check inflation. So you will see that over the years, the Reserve Bank has been playing a key role and is playing an important role to shape the future direction of our economy. Since the initiation of the economic reforms in 1991 and particularly in the 1990s, there are two critical reforms, I would say two major structural reforms of high critical importance to our economy where the Reserve Bank played an important role is that the deficit financing that is the budget deficit financing done by the Reserve Bank was stopped by way of Reserve Bank not directly participating in the treasury bill issuances by the government. Earlier, whatever was the budget deficit, government was raising resources from the market by way of issuing treasury bills and other bonds, and the Reserve Bank was contributing to that. So when Reserve Bank contributes to that, the Reserve Bank also creates new money, and more money going into the system also can and does fuel inflation. So therefore, the financing of the government deficit was stopped and Reserve Bank stopped participating in the primary issuances of the treasury bills. The second major reform, there are quite a few, I have chosen two of them. The second major reform which the Reserve Bank initiated in collaboration with the government at that time was to make the exchange rate to stop. Earlier the exchange rate of the Indian rupee was administered, but during the 1990s, our exchange rate was made market determined. You would recall there were three bouts. There were devaluation of the Indian rupee, and simultaneously our exchange rate with the dollar, our exchange rate of the Indian rupee was made market determined. So these are the two critical changes that was done. Coming to the current millennium, 21st century, whether it is the global financial crisis of 2008 or it is the so-called taper tantrum of 2013, basically referring to an observation by the then chair of the US Federal Reserve, who said that they're likely to sort of pull back liquidity and perhaps going for a tighter monetary policy. It created huge turmoil in the international financial markets, and there was huge, so far as India is concerned, there was huge outflow of dollars. So this is the taper tantrum crisis that India faced in 2013. So whether it is the 2008 global financial crisis or the taper tantrum of 2013 or the post-ILFS crisis in our financial markets, when the liquidity had completely dried up and the confidence, market confidence on our economy or on our financial sector had gone down. I hope I am making sense and not becoming too academic or theoretical. Okay. Okay. So, because I saw a couple of friends yawning there, so I was I thought maybe I am becoming too academic or becoming too sort of theoretical. But I'm trying to present this in as simple manner as possible, not because I have any doubt about your understanding capacity, but I firmly believe, and this is what we are now doing in the Reserve Bank, I firmly believe that the best communication is one which is direct and simple, not unnecessarily complicating and using convoluted sentences, complex sentences. So anyway, I will continue with that. So then, the post-ILFS stress and the lack of confidence in the financial markets. In fact, that was the time I joined the Reserve Bank of India. There was huge shortage of liquidity in the market. The confidence levels of our banks and NBFCs and confidence level by rest of the economy in our banks and NBFCs were again at a very low level. The NPA levels had gone up and they were in double digits, and questions were being raised about the financial stability of our country and the stability of our financial sector. So our prime focus during 2019 was to restore that confidence, to infuse liquidity into the market, and to see that the banking system, the credit system, the NBFCs, the ARCs and all other financial institutions which are in the Reserve Bank's regulatory domain, our effort was to bring back confidence and make them sort of put the necessary fuel into them and enable them to function as well-oiled engines. And we did succeed we were attaining greater success by the end of 2019, but as you know, 2020 the COVID came. And COVID, then 2 years of COVID, followed by the Ukraine war, leading to again global stress, high inflation, then the continuing geopolitical crisis, which is, today we have geopolitical crisis in the Middle East, we have it in Europe, we have it in the South China Sea. So there are various flashpoints in international geopolitics, which are adding to the volatility of the financial markets, not just in India, but also world over. Then also the monetary policy of advanced economies, naturally when the inflation became high, the advanced economies went for very tight, they went for very strong monetary tightening done at a strong and a fast pace of monetary tightening. Interest rates were increased, liquidity was attempted to be squeezed out. So in this environment, every economy in the world faced challenges. India was no exception. So in all these challenges, I can say it with confidence that I think the Reserve Bank has taken appropriate, timely measures. Our effort was always to be proactive, was to take action before the problem, surfaces. I'll just give you one example. When the COVID crisis set in, one of the first things that we did, one of the first moves we did, if I remember correctly, on COVID, I think hit India. The lockdown was announced on 25th March. But 10 days, about 8 or 10 days before that, on 15th or 16th of March, when COVID was, it became quite a strong possibility. What we did is that we immediately alerted the banks to strengthen their IT systems, to strengthen their IT resilience systems, to improve their cyber security measures. We had a meeting with the CEOs of banks because we found that when the world is facing a crisis, there would be huge attempts to cyber security attacks on the the IT systems of banks and other financial institutions. So therefore we strengthened that. And to ensure continued functioning of the financial markets, we created a bio bubble in one of our data centers, Kharghar, Belapur, just in the outskirts of Mumbai. And we put 250 of our officers and service providers in a quarantine facility. Not only the office environment, but also we had a nearby hotel, the entire hotel we had, and these officers and service providers, 250 of them, they were staying in the hotel, coming in the morning, and it was, like around the clock, they were coming during their shift time in a bus which had about 2-3 buses which had been sanitized. The staff, the drivers, the cleaners of the buses, the hotel staff, our data center staff, and all these people, they were in a kind of they were all in a biobubble facility, completely sort of away and no contact with others. So that ensured, of course, after a few months we rotated the staff, but I will just give you one example, and this is something which I think all of us owe to our system, the commitment of our people. In fact, after 3 months, and I used to regularly interact through video conference with all our officers which were put in the quarantine facility. So every 1 to 2 months, 3 months, I used to interact with them through the video. But on a regular basis, our other senior officers at the level of executive directors and deputy governors, they were regularly in touch. So after 2-3 months, when I asked the officers who are in the quarantine, first I gave them confidence that, look, we are looking after your families and family members, don't worry. They are our responsibility, so don't have any worries. If anybody has a health issue, we will deal with it, and if you want any time to come out, you are free to come out. But I said, look, all of you have been there for 3 months, so if you would like to come out, we will plan for it and we will take it out, take out some of you and then we'll replace you. And in fact, we had prepared a plan. But believe me, when I asked this question, all our officers who were that is the Reserve Bank officers who were in the quarantine facility, and the service providers, that is, representatives of various IT companies and service providers who were there in that biobubble and in that quarantine facility, all of them said in a uniform voice, no sir, we want to continue. So that is the kind of, steps. So on the whole, what I'm saying is that during this crisis, we have taken multiple measures. Another example I want to give is that when the Delta wave in April, May 2021, when the Delta wave hit Delta wave of COVID hit our economy, hit our country, and in fact the loss of lives were much more in the Delta wave during of the COVID. So when that set in sometime in the beginning of April, so around 15th or 20th of April, we did realize that it is going to be it's going to be severe problem and a challenge, particularly for the MSMEs to run their businesses, because they were just recovering from the impact of COVID and the COVID induced lockdown, full lockdown and then partial lockdown, restrictions on movements, restrictions on movement of raw materials and supplies, restrictions on movement of manpower, people not being able to come to factories or offices to work. So when we were just getting out of that, again the Delta wave came. So we realized that this will cause a big stress for the MSMEs. So therefore, somewhere around the middle of April, I think around the 20th then we started working on that. And if I remember correctly, in the first week of May, we announced a resolution framework 2.0 for the MSME sector in particular. Much before or well before, there was a demand from the MSME players or the MSME associations asking for a resolution framework. We had announced it. So therefore, I think over the period of time, if you see, the Reserve Bank has tried to move in sync with the with the growth requirements and to deal with the challenges of our economy. Now, the function of the Reserve Bank is to support the growth of the economy. The primary function as defined in the preamble of the Reserve Bank of India is to maintain price stability while keeping in mind the objective of growth. This was a major structural reform which was initiated, which was undertaken by the government by way of amending the Reserve Bank of India Act in 2016 and implementing what is known as the Flexible Inflation Targeting Framework. After 2016 amendment to the Reserve Bank of India Act, the Reserve Bank was mandated under the law to maintain price stability, and price stability was defined as maintaining 4% inflation with a band of 2%. That is, it can be 2 to 6%. If it is between 2 to 6%, then it is not considered as a failure of monetary policy, but the target is 4%. So that was a big reform. And why this reform was undertaken, I can tell you, because I was at that time in the other side, that is in the government, in the finance ministry, in the economic affairs department, directly dealing with this issue. And the government undertook this amendment, and I consider this as a major structural reform, along with GST and the implementation of the insolvency and bankruptcy code. In fact, if you ask me which are the three big reforms in the last 3 years, I would say 1, GST, 2, the implementation of the inflation targeting framework, 3, IBC. These are the three biggest, and there are of course others, like there are several other reforms and policy initiatives. But in my opinion, in my humble opinion, these are the three of the biggest reforms which have been undertaken by in the last 10 years. And I think these are the three major reforms which are and which will be the biggest drivers of our growth in the future years and decades. Now, let me try. So therefore, that is the responsibility of the Reserve Bank. So we are also mandated, while maintaining inflation at 4%, we are also mandated to keep in mind the objective of growth. And we have always supported the growth requirements of our economy. When COVID hit, we reduced the interest rates, what is known as the policy rates or the repo rate, by 250 basis points when COVID hit. And we did it very quickly. When after the Ukraine war started, due to various international factors and some domestic weather events, when suddenly inflation hit 7.8%, we also very quickly increased the interest rates. Today, let me just go try and conclude. Today, if you ask me where does the economy stand today, whether the Indian growth story is intact or not, I think that is a question which is being asked. Yesterday, the GDP data for the first quarter of this year, that is April to June, was announced by the National Statistical Office. It has come at 6.7%, although the Reserve Bank's projection was 7.1%. Now, obviously, it is something which, I think some people have already started talking about it, and it is possible that people may have questions whether our growth trajectory, whether India's growth story is intact or not. I would like to say, with all humility and sincerity, and with all confidence, that the Indian growth story is intact. The data was released last evening around 5:30, so I didn't have much time. I haven't been able to go through it in detail. In any case, our research wing, the research department of the Reserve Bank, the monetary policy department of the Reserve Bank, they will do a detailed analysis, and when I go back next week, they will present it to me. But I have made a very quick analysis by looking at the growth numbers, what was released by the National Statistical Office. Now, there are various components of the GDP number. In that, in fact, I tried to pick up some of them and tried to note it so that I give, the main drivers of growth. There are some supply side drivers to growth. There is demand side drivers to growth. In the demand side, it is consumption, it's investment, and it is the net exports, that is exports minus or imports, the difference between exports and imports. but primarily it is primarily consumption expenditure, and including private and government consumption, and it is the particularly private consumption has a big role, and it is the investment. On the supply side, it is agriculture, industry, and services. I was looking at the numbers. Now, in the first quarter, April to June, private consumption has grown by 7.4% against 4% of the fourth quarter of last year. I will not bore you with numbers, but just want to say that private consumption has grown in the first quarter by 7.4%. Investment has grown by 7.5%. Industries has grown by 7.4%. Manufacturing has grown by 7%. Services sector has grown by 7.7%. Construction sector has grown by 10.5%. It's one component which has pulled down the growth. It's government expenditure, both central and state government expenditure. Perhaps due to the election season, I mean, that was the time when elections were held, and there was a model code of conduct also in force. So therefore, government expenditure has come low. It's minus 0.2%. Now, so if you see among all the drivers, the growth in first quarter is 7% plus, all the drivers of GDP growth. One component, that is government expenditure, is minus 0.2%. But we are reasonably, hopeful. We do expect, and we also, I say it with confidence, that budgeted expenditure of the governments, the central government and all state governments, should get spent in the next 3 quarters. So whatever shortfall has been noticed in the first quarter, I would like to believe at this point of time that it will be spent in the next 3 quarters. The other thing is that I talked about manufacturing, which has grown at, I mentioned that manufacturing at 7%, services sector at 7.7%, agriculture sector in the first quarter has grown by 2%. But thanks to the monsoon being very good this year, and monsoon was initially, it made a slightly late start, but it has really now covered large parts of the country, excepting few parts in eastern India and in the northern part, Punjab and Haryana. But Punjab and Haryana agriculture largely depends on irrigated water, and I think rainfall has started there, and hopefully they will do better in the coming months. And Odisha also, I am told, in many parts the rains have been good. So I think going ahead, I would like to believe that whatever growth projection we have given for the current year, 7.2%, should happen, should materialize. And so that is talking in terms of numbers. But our interaction with through our surveys, what results we get through the Reserve Bank surveys, the results we get through our interaction with the industry players, with our market consultations, with our consultations with other key stakeholders of the industry, various industry bodies and associations, getting the inputs from the banks about the kind of loan growth which is happening. For example, I think the industry, under industry category, the credit growth from the banks has grown this year up to the latest figure which RBI has released, July 12th or July 24th, whatever be the date, is about the credit growth is 10% vis-a-vis 4% of last year. And we see a big confidence in all the business houses. Two important things are happening in that, which have a lot of potential, and they will happen in the going forward. Manufacturing sector, for example, the capacity utilization is 76, which is an all-time high, and the balance sheets of the banks and the balance sheets of the corporates are today deleveraged. Deleveraged meaning they have reduced their liabilities. That is, corporates have reduced their liabilities by way of reducing their loan outstanding, reducing their debt. Banks' balance sheets are also then, whatever provisions had to be made for the bad assets, for the NPAs, they have already made. So the balance sheets of the banks and the corporates are deleveraged. Banks are in a position to provide credit, notwithstanding the, you may ask, the difference between deposit growth and credit growth. Notwithstanding that, the banks will be able to meet the credit requirements of the economy. And in any case, the banks are now planning to sort of launch new products and new approaches and tapping their branch network to raise more deposits. So banks will be able to provide the required credit for the economy and the balance sheets of the corporates in particular. And given the overall health of the MSMEs, there are problems of some MSMEs here and there, but I think they are deleveraged and they are in a position to do their business, to do their job definitely as would be expected from them. So I am pretty sort of confident about India's growth prospects. And I have said, I think twice, that as I conclude, this is the final time I am saying as I conclude, but it is my responsibility to say this. I think India is making great strides in two areas: in innovation, in adopting financial technology, that is in fintech, and in startups. I think these are the potential drivers. Yesterday, in the last 3 days, we had the Global Financial Festival, the GFF, Global Financial Fest. The 5th edition was held last 3 days in Mumbai. And I was there on the first day in a particular speaking session. And yesterday also the Honorable Prime Minister participated and he spoke in the morning yesterday at the GFF. The total participation, this GFF started in 2020 in the virtual mode because that was the COVID year, with a participation of 12,000, delegates and others who officially take part in this thing, not walk-in people who just walk in to see the exhibition, but serious players. Starting in 2020 with a participation of 12,000 participants, this year the GFF, the Global Financial Fest, has witnessed 80,000 participants from all parts of India and from all parts of the world. Yesterday, as I came to the airport to take the flight, I found so many youngsters wearing the GFF band, and many of them came and had a short chat with me. And the confidence you see in our youngsters who are in these areas of fintech, in innovation, in startups, it's truly amazing. I think the younger generation is today highly motivated. The younger generation of India is dreaming. The younger generation of India has the potential, they have dreams, and they have the capabilities to take our country forward. And we can all expect the younger lot. I mean, we are all elderly people, but the younger generation, and the young today, the bar has shifted. Young is not 20s and 30s. Young is today, I think, goes up to mid-50s. So that may exclude all of us, excepting many of us on the dais, not all of us, many of us on the dais, because I still see some youngsters here. Prashant is a youngster. I still consider him as a youngster. He has never used any dye for his hair, he tells me. But I think, on a serious note, I think the younger generation in India has huge potential, and we have already become a world leader in the payments ecosystem, in digital payments. We are trying to do much more in that area. We have launched the pilot project of central bank digital currencies, the CBDCs. The pilot project is run in several states, including Odisha. In fact, Odisha was one of the first 5 or 6 states where we launched this. And today we have about 50 lakh participants in our CBDC, that is central bank e-rupee, in the e-rupee pilot project. So with all this innovation and Reserve Bank, we are also trying to provide adequate regulatory support to all this innovation, to all this fintech ecosystem. We are providing them the regulatory support with, of course, appropriate safeguards and guardrails to manage the potential risks and challenges. So I have great confidence on our future. I have great confidence on our people. I have great confidence on our younger generation. And I think every stakeholder of the economy, whether it is the authorities like the Reserve Bank of India or professions like the CA community, I think if each of us discharges our duties, our responsibilities with the highest level of commitment, I see no reason I see no reason or no factor which can hold India back. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. In the last national conference, two eminent chartered accountants of Bhubaneswar, CA Prashant Panda sir and CA Rajiv Shekhar Sahu sir, has proposed and created a fund to recognize the topper in CA examination in the state of Odisha. So
Namaskar.
now,
भुवनेश्वर मोर होम टाउन जीवन बहुत वर्ष इनिशियल इयर्स रे मुझे भुवनेश्वर रे कटई जो प्रत्येक थर भुवनेश्वर आसे भुवनेश्वर गोटे अलग फिलिंग आसे माने अनेक दिन पर जो भुवनेश्वर लैंड कर गोटे होमली फिलिंग आ गोटे अन्य जगह भी आई फील वेरी मच पार्ट ऑफ अदर प्लेसेस बट भुवनेश्वर आसे गोटे स्पेशल फिलिंग और से कि मु भुवनेश्वर चैप्टर ओडिशा चैप्टर ऑफ आईसीएआई को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद जनाइबा चाहूँगी। ओडिया रे मु कहि परिबी पूरा भाषणटा किंतु एठी अनेक अछंती जो माने कि ओडिया बुझी परिबेनी सेतबे कि मु इंग्लिश रे कहिबी। Chairperson of Bhubaneswar chapter or branch of the ICI, Ms. Janvi Deo, Shri Prashant Panda, Shri Sanjeev Sanghi, Shri Gautam Lenka, Shri Ranjit Kumar Agarwal, President AI. I am thankful that he has made it, he has found it convenient to be here today. Shri Sandeep Kumar Gupta, CMD GAIL, who is here as a guest of honor. It's heartening to know that he is a chartered accountant himself and he has given several suggestions for the consideration of the ICAI. Members of the media, my colleagues from the Reserve Bank, officials of the government, distinguished guests, members of ICAI, ladies and gentlemen. I am delighted to be here this morning to participate in this conference of the ICAI, which and your national conference. The role of auditors, in particular statutory auditors and other auditors, even if you are not doing a statutory function, the other functions which you are doing, the role of auditors is very, very important for the progress of our country, a point which has been highlighted by the previous speakers. Auditors act as the eyes and ears of any business or any company. Auditors provide critical insights into the actual working and actual state of health of any business organization or any company or any other organization which may not be dealing with finance but which may be in manufacturing, which may be an NGO, which may be whatever be the entity. So auditors are indeed the eyes and ears, and they're expected to be truly and fully professional, autonomous in their functioning, without any fear or favor. In fact, auditors are expected to provide independent evaluation of the companies, as I just mentioned, and so therefore this is a point which is known to all of you, and I don't have to say anything more. Now, the quality of audit in any organization is very important. From the country's perspective, depending on the quality of our audit professionals, the international confidence of the rest of the world on India's economy, on India's finances, the confidence of international investors, the confidence of Indian investors and confidence of every Indian on the functioning of financial institutions like banks, NBFCs or any other business, howsoever big or small. I think for developing that confidence, the role of auditors is extremely important. So the quality of audit is very important. Quality of audit transcends merely going into numbers, because today in the age of artificial intelligence and in the age of computers, you can program everything and the AI can generate an audit of any firm based on the numbers which is presented before you by the management of the company. But it's the auditor's task and challenge to see that the numbers which are provided are correct, the numbers which are provided by the management are truthful, and they are not sort of camouflaging any hidden reality. I am not for a moment, I repeat, I am not for a moment encouraging you to have a confrontational relationship with the managements of companies which you are auditing. Certainly not. But I think it's a part of your responsibility to do a true diagnosis like a doctor does, a true diagnosis of the health of a company. I think that is the biggest responsibility. There are quality aspects in the functioning of any company, how the board is functioning, whether the discussions in the board proceedings are free and fair, whether the reporting systems are adequate, whether the internal controls in any company and in particular financial institutions by like the banks, etc., whether they are appropriate and whether they are robust. I think these are the qualitative aspects also which I would feel are important, which auditors may look at. Now, I'm not sure whether it is a part of the brief of the role of auditors as perceived by the ICAI, but as from the Reserve Bank of India, we give lot of importance to these issues. Today, our supervisors, when they go to